Today I'm going to show you how I switch adapted this Miss Rachel plush to be more accessible to kids with disabilities. Anytime you're looking to switch adapt a toy, you want to first find the activation points. This toy has two, one in each hand. The right side is for speech and the left side is for music and songs. So that tells me we're going to need two of my mono jack cables. I typically buy my cables off Amazon in a pack of 10 that come pre-soldered. These are the specs on them and they cost about $13. I did go ahead and strip some of that solder off the end because we're not going to be soldering to a circuit board for this adaptation. Other tools you'll need for this adaptation are electrical tape, wire strippers, a seam ripper and sewing kit, soldering iron and solder for the best hold, batteries, and of course, an adaptive switch. I like to start with a fresh set of batteries just so I know I'm not going to encounter any problems during the adaptation. You'll also want to switch the toy off before beginning. I used my seam ripper to make an opening on her arm to look for the switch. You do not need to go up this high. You're going to be much more effective if you make your opening near her hand, which I discovered by the second side. Since I made the cut so far up her arm, I did have to remove a lot of the stuffing to get to the switch. You can forego this step if you do it like I do on the second arm. Once you find the switch, it's going to be attached to the doll with two small pieces of green thread. You can use your seam ripper to tear those off. Once you have the switch exposed, use the end of your wire strippers to cut it off as close to the end as possible. We're going to replace this switch with our mono jack cable. That way, instead of being activated when the hand is squeezed, it will be activated anytime a switch that is plugged into the toy is activated. Wire strippers to pull some of the plastic coating off the end of the wires. You want to have about a ½ inch of exposed copper. Then we're going to line up one of the wires from our mono jack cable with one of the wires from the toy and twist them together. In the end, each of the wires from the toy should be connected to one of the wires from the mono jack cable. It should look something like this. This is where you want to take your soldering gun or iron and your solder and give both connections a good coat. I've heard that the smaller $15 soldering irons are cheaper than the big ones like this, but I've always had an easier time manipulating the solder, especially if I'm doing a circuit board toy when I use this one. And don't worry, this does not hurt Miss Rachel. Once your connections are coated, take two small pieces of the electrical tape and create somewhat of a flag on each connection. Then you can begin tucking the wiring back inside the toy. And of course, I had a lot of restuffing to do. Before sewing her up, I decided to plug in a switch and test the connection. Once I saw the connection was good, I went ahead and got my sewing kit to close the incision. I'm no Dr. Miami, and sewing is certainly not my strong suit. But we got the job done. And Miss Rachel seemed happy with it. Now it's time to begin the other side with the wisdom we have from the first one. This time I made a smaller incision closer to her hand. Once I located the switch, I used my seam ripper to cut the green threads, and then again used my wire strippers to cut the end of the switch off. Just like with the first side, you're going to use those wire strippers to pull off about a ½ inch of the plastic coating. Take your second mono jack cable and again line up the wiring and twist it together. Bring the soldering iron or gun back out and again give each connection a good coating. Pull two pieces of electrical tape off and create a flag on each connection. And it's time to bring out the sewing kit and sew her back up. Make sure you turn the toy back on before plugging in your favorite adaptive switch. If you want both features accessible at the same time, you're going to need two switches. If not, you can always trade off.